Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to the International Tax Conference of FICCI. And I'm very grateful to the chairman CBDT for agreeing to join us despite the Parliament session and budget round the corner. And of course, our mentor, Mr. Dinesh Kanabar of the Taxation Committee that we have. As you all know, taxation of digital economy and work around global minimum corporate tax rate are the topics which are being discussed and talked about worldwide. And a lot of work has been happening in this space. FICCI is very happy to conduct this conference, which will focus on these current developments in the international tax space, and we have a lot of experts speaking in the subsequent sessions as well, but none other than Mr. Chairman CBDT and Mr. Kanabar, who's an expert in the tax, the best expert in direct taxes that the country could have. So with both of them, we're going to have this inaugural, followed by some of the technical sessions with some key experts in these areas. So with these words, may I request the chairman, the mentor of FICCI's Tax Committee and chairman of Dhruva Advisors, Mr. Dinesh Kanabar, for his welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Kanabar.
Thank you, Jyoti, and a very good morning, Chairman, sir, and everybody on this international seminar. The number of changes that we have seen in the field of international tax in the last few years has been unprecedented. I don't think in the last several decades we have seen the number of changes that we have seen in the last couple of years. More important, the speed at which the changes are being implemented is unprecedented. When in 2014, BEPS started this project of coming up with new treaty guidelines and sort of relooking at everything that we understood thus far as sacrosanct in the field of international tax, nobody had budgeted that the timelines which they give out, they will adhere to. And sure enough, the OECD has adhered to timelines, has come out with whatever propositions they had to within those time frames, framing the rules, etc. And the latest of what we call as BEPS 2, the introduction of Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, is the most radical step in the field of international taxation. When I grew up studying international tax, I was told that there were two things which were sacrosanct, which is that in the field of international taxes, unless you had a physical presence in a particular country, you could not be liable to tax in that country at all. The concept which India was trying to introduce, which is ceding the right to tax to market jurisdiction, was not acceptable anywhere in the world. In fact, the world regarded India as being an outlier, being an aggressive tax jurisdiction, because it wanted to tax people on the basis of source. And lo and behold, when BEPS 2 was unveiled and Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 was accepted, Voice of India was very much accepted, and the world started to accept that whatever the developing countries were stating about the fact that markets should have a right to tax was something which was not outrageous. In fact, it was accepted very much in terms of Pillar 1. And when we look at Pillar 2, we started looking at a proposition that the world of taxes, where you could have tax havens, which had sort of almost been accepted as a norm, was no longer a norm. The whole facade regarding ensuring secrecy, numbered accounts, everything has slowly been given a go by, and we are now looking at a world where a 15% rate of tax for corporates is almost an accepted axiom. Many of the countries who we thought will never agree, the Irelands of the world, the UAEs of the world, have all been part of the 132 countries which have signed up on Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 and agreed to implement it from effect from 1st January 23. And here again, OECD has been relentless to go back and come out with guidelines. There may be a delay for 15 days, 1 month, but by and large, OECD has been at it. And as I said, that India needs to take a fair share of credit for having sharpened the worldview, for having shaped the worldview in this regard. And it is now accepted that if you are a company which is making more than 10% profits, if your turnover is more than what is prescribed in pillar one, then you would be taxed on the basis of provision of markets. And as I said, the fact that maybe it's a matter of time, over the next few years tax havens will come to an end. Even domestically, we have seen a number of changes. And one of the biggest changes we saw is India sort of take away the retrospective amendment on indirect taxation, which again was something which was impacting the world of taxes. People were okay to say that any underlying value in India could be taxed in India, but not retrospectively. And lo and behold, like we did in the case of farm laws, we went back and said, let's not look at something which is going to give us a bad name and not give us any revenues. And India welcome. It is a very, very welcome step, has been viewed very, very positively in the global context. As we move to the new level, I think the issue which stares at India, and which I'm sure the CBDT chairman, CBDT will look at, talk about, is how do we provide better certainty to international investors? That's going to be very, very critical. India has taken a stand, and rightly so, that India does not want its tax sovereignty to be ceded in favor of international arbitration. India would like Indian authorities to decide on taxes, which is very, very welcome. Equally, however, we need to expedite the process of dispute resolution globally, and whatever we need to do in terms of competent authority, mutual agreement procedure, etc. So we are staring at a new world. We need to stare at this world very, very differently. My concern is that anything which is new is prone to take time to settle down, and we need to provide, as I said, dispute resolution mechanism. And finally, last but not the least, is the development which India has in terms of its negotiations with USTR. We were staring at levy of unilateral levies by USA. Equalization levy was becoming a sore thumb. And last month in November, when the US trade delegation came down to India, had a meeting with the Commerce Ministry, etc., we buried that ghost. We agreed, consistent with the global norms, that equalization levy will not exist beyond March 24, or the implementation of Pillar 1, whichever is earlier. More important, we agreed that the taxes paid from April 22 will be creditable against future taxes payable under Pillar 1. Again, all a step in the right direction. And I think very much welcome. We are looking at an exciting time ahead. And with that, let me hand over to Chairman CBDT. Sir, we are honored with your presence out here. Look forward to hearing from you on India's approach to Pillar 1, Pillar 2. And again, thank you for helping shape the global dialogue on this process.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kanabar, for setting the tone, really. And of course, we now turn to the inaugural address of the day by none other than the Chairman CBDT, Mr. Mahapatra. And of course, no introduction required to the audience out here. He's an IRS officer, has done several layers of work in the tax authority. Of course, very, very rich experience, and not only just the tax area. He's also been in other areas of bureaucracy as well. So that brings very rich experience, which is required to really discharge the duty and the job, which he is on to. So with these words, without any further ado, over to you, sir, for your inaugural address.
Thank you, Ms. Beach, Mr. Kanabar, and all from Fiki. While I would like to begin by saying that the process of globalizing the taxation part of our business has been the call of the hour. The fact remains that the international tax structure and the processes around those structures have been of real ancient vintage. They are supposed to have come in 1920s. So in 1920s, the processes which were relevant for brick and mortar business, to expect those processes to sustain and to be the drivers in the 2020s or later years would have been foolhardy. We required and the world required the international tax structure and the systems to change, get revamped with the call of the times. So what happened progressively from 2013 when the BEPS project was initiated from 2000 and then in 2016, the political statement on the inclusive framework project. And later on in 2020-21, when the big announcement came with regard to the inclusive framework statement, where 137 out of 141 countries, they supported the statement on Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. The fact remains that rules, regulations, and concepts change over time. India never had a transfer pricing provision until 2001. Before that, we had the section 1992 and just the one rule, Rule 10, to drive the transfer pricing work related to an assessment. But as multinationals and the foreign companies came to occupy majorly the business space in India, so the need for changes in the processes started happening. And so we had a whole set of rules and regulations woven around the transfer pricing which came up. In that manner, the inclusive framework statement in October 2021 is a step in that direction, how to multilaterally collaborate on a more just and fair world, where taxation rights would not be gauged by your residence alone or by the source rule alone, but by a mix of both, where the countries of market, the COM, or what we call the market economies, they also stand to gain from the level of revenues that their population generate for a product which is sourced outside. So this is the basic rule and the basic fundamental on which the whole structure of inclusive framework is built around. What I know of Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 conceptually is that this will clear the pathways for more development and more refining of the rules of business multilaterally and also on a one-to-one basis. And secondly, to me, more important part of this exercise would be to letting businesses decide on location or relocation of their businesses, not on the factor of tax rates alone. Now, multinationals, probably with the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 in place, would be looking at the quality of manpower, the quality of infrastructure for their businesses in the locations they would shift to. So the needle, as far as the business choices are concerned, it has moved a little, and the focus now probably would be not just on the tax rates, but on the efficacy or on the efficiency that their resources would bring to the table in the long run. Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, there have been dialogues. Pillar 1, as has been stated, would be confined to 100 top MNEs above a certain level of revenue generation and with a certain percentage of PBT, and the residual profit they are to be distributed based on a nexus rule among the market economies. While Pillar 2 would be running around 3 sub-concepts: the STTR, the UTPR, and the IIR. The rules running around the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, they are under now dialogue, and in some more time, probably after a great deal of discussion and iterations, they would come in place. But as far as India is concerned, and the revenue goals are concerned, what India stands to gain from this exercise is that, as per the World Inequality Labs report today only, Pillar 2 alone has been projected to get India $500 million of additional tax revenue. And the World Inequality report would say that if the 15% minimum corporate rate, if it is upped to 25%, then the minimum additional tax gain to India will come somewhere around 1.4 billion euros. The fact remains that whether it is 15% or 25%, that there is always a scope to debate. But at this point in time, when there was no rule as regards a multilateral consensus on the minimum rate of tax, at least the 15% would be some kind of support for a level playing field for all MNEs to play around and all the tax jurisdiction to get benefit from. There has been a real race to the bottom as far as tax rates were concerned among jurisdictions. And that race to the bottom, probably with the Pillar 2 in place, would quell, and it will die down or subside for a bit until there will be uh, newer innovations by the canny and the clever to get around these provisions. But at this point in time, the absence of a level playing field for market economies to get from the producer companies, the MNEs, has been addressed. And in future, as the rules of the game are developed and the domestic tax jurisdictions also incorporate in their tax statutes the various provisions in order to introduce and operationalize Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, we can see a more clear path as to where we stand and how we intend to fully operationalize the commitment given in the inclusive framework document. And the challenge, of course, will remain with regard to the dispute resolution, the binding dispute resolution through the officials, tax officials working multilaterally. That will be multilaterally and on a one-to-one basis. That will be a great challenge. And the future will tell as to how strong and how conceptually comprehensive, clear are the guidelines and the SOPs that will be drawn that will hold us in good state. So for the MNEs, for the top MNEs, and for the tax jurisdiction across the globe, I think it holds this inclusive framework statement, the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, holds great promise, and I'm sure that the business opportunities will rise also. The taxing revenues, additional taxing revenues also will come to India in due course. And there are exciting times for the tax professionals doing their work in the international tax. I would like to conclude here, and I wish this particular workshop great success. Thank you.
Great, sir. Sir,
Uh,
if I can just take the liberty of maybe asking you just a couple of very small questions, nothing very elaborate. Uh, One is, as I said, I would compliment the government on doing this uh, equalization levy resolution and USTR. We are looking at an equalization levy which will be on the statute only for a year or two, and the concern is that there'll be sort of dispute interpretation. Is it worth having a statute just for 2 years and sort of subject to interpretation? And maybe I would just like to leave this as a thought with you more than anything else. And sir, on a question front, uh, when we again discussed with USTR, we said that equalization levy will be a credit against pillar one. Any thoughts, anything that you would like to share in this regard, sir?
On the second part, on the DST and the what do you call the standstill and the removal of the DST, there has been a press note issued by us in November 2021, which would say that things will be clearer on 1st of February 2022. I think we should read that press note. I don't have much to share apart from that press note, and so that's all I could say at this moment in time.
Sir.
And with regard to equalization levy, believe this came up through finance acts. They are not typical legislations per se, and the fine. And I take your point. So let's see how the how the issues with regard to these issues of dispute arising from equalization levy, how they are tackled. I am aware of this issue. You have also raised it in one of the meetings. So I am aware of this one, and we have taken note of.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yes, Jyoti.
Yeah, hi. So, Abha, I think there were some questions. Are there some questions there?
A chat box for you.
Yeah, I'm unable to access it. So would you like to read it out?
Sure.
I think we should not have more than one or two questions because
Yes, I think there is just one question. There's just one question. I think.
Yeah. So it says why India is not liberalizing the personal taxation norm for foreign investors, as such norms are not investor friendly. Liberalization in this norm will encourage global conglomerates to pick Indian cities as the choice for their headquarters, as opposed to cities such as Singapore, Dubai, and others in Asia.
Yes, this is a policy call in which CBDT alone would not be involved. This requires multifarious departments pitching in with their views. So I will not be able to answer this question solely from the tax point of view.
Thank you, sir. I think this is the only question for now, but time is also short, so we won't really press you for more questions. Also, I think you gave a lot of clarity on how India is really working on these two pillars, which will shape the future of the taxation in the coming days. And so this is exactly the kind of clarity and the leadership which India has shown is going to really bring a lot of confidence into the system. And I think the recent retrospective act withdrawal was absolutely something which instilled a lot of confidence. And we're all, keenly looking at the budget as well, hoping that, there'll be a more facilitative environment which will be created, even through the taxation, whatever changes that may happen in the taxation as well. So thank you once again, sir, for being with us. And I would request Mr. Kanabar to propose a formal vote of thanks before we could ask you to go, sir. A few more minutes. Mr. Kanabar.
Chairman, sir, again, thank you. Thank you for stepping in. Thank you for the clarity that you have provided. I would totally agree with the point that you made that if we continue to live in the old era, we are not looking at how the world has changed on account of digital economy. Whether it is equalization levy, whether it is significant economic presence, India has shown the lead to the world. I do remember, sir, and I can share this with you, that when India introduced equalization levy, there was enough and more in the media to criticize why did India do so. And then lo and behold, Europe started doing it. And then we came back to say, oh, now others are following us. So I think it's very, very easy to criticize policies. We need to recognize, sir, as you rightly mentioned, we are a developing country. Our priorities have to be different from the priorities of the developing country. The point which you made, sir, is that what we need to look at is dispute resolution. I think your point on multilateral dispute resolution is very, very well made. And I do hope and wish, sir, that under your stewardship, India also shows the way that we don't need to be perceived as a country where disputes take 15, 20 years to resolve. We can find earlier ways to resolve dispute. Thank you so much, sir. Grateful to you once again, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everybody. And just stay tuned in. We will be soon there with the next session.